They add, Justin and his lawyer, Bryan Freedman, are so hell-bent on destroying Blake.
She's very limber as she contorts her body to fit into whatever victimhood she's.
Was Blake Lively's lawsuit truly a pursuit of justice, or a strategic effort to discredit Justin Baldwin? Newly revealed documents from attorney Bryan Freedman expose striking inconsistencies that could upend the entire story. The situation is proving far more intricate than it first appeared, and insiders hint that this new evidence could mark a turning point. Still, one crucial question lingers. If Blake's account begins to fall apart, who stands to lose more, her meticulously built reputation, or Justin's chance to defend himself and fight back against the allegations?
Let's get into part 2. Blake Lively appears to be moving the goalpost yet again when it comes to the alleged smear campaign. Now, Lively subpoenaed third parties. Investigation form sourced intelligence. It's a joint letter they both filed here, okay? They engaged them by the liner firm for the Wayfair parties. The parties submitted a joint letter pursuant to the court's September 15th order, where the details of the smear campaign appear to have changed again. Both sides argue whether information should be compelled, and reasoning we have seen before, what's privileged, what's not, etc. But the timeline aspect is getting the most attention. Page 1, second paragraph, here it is. You're looking for it. Here, Miss Lively alleges the defendants, Wayfair Studios LLC, and certain of its executives, affiliated entities, and public relations professionals, together, the Wayfair parties, engaged in a retaliatory online smear campaign that began during filming and promotion of the film, It Ends With Us, and continues.
Insiders are now whispering that the lead attorney has dropped a bombshell, one that doesn't just challenge the actress's claims, but could flip the entire narrative on its head. According to sources close to the proceedings, the latest documents may recast her from alleged victim to something far less innocent. Initially, her lawsuit painted a dramatic picture, a performer subjected to uncomfortable demands, cornered into scenes she hadn't fully agreed to, while the director appeared to disregard her consent. That was the story presented both to the courtroom and to the public. Yet the new evidence suggests the script wasn't written that way at all. The contradictions are stark. Buried within the case files are written communications and production notes portraying her as far more than a passive participant. She wasn't simply following direction. She was giving it. The records describe her directing lighting angles, adjusting camera placements for intimate shots, and even instructing the director on specific blocking choices. In some messages, she reportedly requested retakes to achieve her desired effect. These actions don't resemble those of someone powerless. They suggest control, and that contrast could severely damage her credibility under oath. In legal terms, when testimony conflicts with documented evidence, it's called impeachment of credibility. If a witness claims coercion yet written records show active leadership, juries notice when the story starts to crumble on paper. By taking command on set and later framing herself as pressured, she risks losing public sympathy while shifting responsibility back onto herself. For years, she's maintained a polished, untouchable image, talented, bold, and scandal-free. But each contradictory document makes that image seem less authentic and more like performance. Observers now question not just whether she exaggerated, but whether she may have carefully shaped the entire narrative, using influence behind the scenes, then portraying herself as the victim. That's the angle the defense is now emphasizing, reframing her from victim to manipulator. If the evidence holds, the case becomes less about defending the director and more about exposing her control, raising a critical question. Was she, in effect, acting as her own intimacy coordinator all along?
Women are so hell-bent on destroying Blake, they're trying to shed a law meant to protect victims and send a chilling effect to others from speaking out. I am so offended by this attempt. She's now using real, actual victims out there as a way to get away with this, basically saying he's not allowed to sue and defend himself because I'm a victim, and he's now draining my bills and money and legal costs, and how dare he? Girl, you can afford it. Of all people, you can afford it. This is absurd to use that as a way to stand up for all victims. I'm sickened.
Most people assume that intimacy scenes on film sets operate under strict protocols, with trained coordinators ensuring that boundaries are clear and everyone's comfort is protected. But insiders are now whispering a startling question. Was the leading actress secretly calling the shots instead of following the standard process? While it may sound unbelievable, accounts emerging from behind the scenes depict her not simply performing a role, but actively directing it. Industry rules are explicit. Intimacy coordinators are hired to safeguard consent, regulate physical contact, and choreograph every movement down to a glance or touch. Actors and directors alike are expected to follow those instructions precisely, maintaining safety and professionalism. Yet reports suggest this production played out differently. Rather than taking cues, the actress allegedly gave them. Witnesses claim she stepped decisively into the coordinator's role herself. When the director discussed a kiss angle, she reportedly interjected, specifying how long the contact should last and when to shift out of frame. On another occasion, she is said to have directed camera operators to adjust their positioning for the best emotional effect, even demanding retakes when the chemistry didn't feel right. This wasn't a minor contribution, it was control. In an environment designed for shared authority, her assertiveness created tension. Crew members described rehearsals where she mapped timing, whispered adjustments mid-scene, and pushed for changes that most performers would never request. Internal communications captured her detailed notes, more like stage directions than mere suggestions, underscoring her influence over choreography that's typically managed by designated professionals. The contrast is striking. Publicly, she described feeling pressured and overstepped. But if records show she was not only approving but directing those same scenes, the story shifts. It raises difficult questions about power, perception, and truth on creative sets, about how control can blur with collaboration, and how narratives evolve once the lights dim. The timing of her later complaint adds another layer. Why raise concerns only after filming wrapped? Whether it was miscommunication, mismanagement, or something more calculated, the case exposes how fragile the balance of consent, control, and credibility can be behind the camera, and how quickly the narrative can flip when the cameras stop rolling.
She placed the substance of the relevant information from Exhibit 1 in the public record, flatly ignoring that the person recorded without his consent, Mr. Sarowitz, should be allowed to have the entire recording made public to ensure accuracy and provide context. So he's of the Baha'i faith, right? Which is a very peaceful people, and yet he was accused of some pretty wild things. It's pretty much like the core of Blake Lively's argument, or part of it, is that he's willing to destroy her as much money as it...
If an actress truly felt pushed beyond her comfort zone during production, the most pressing question becomes simple: why wait until the camera stopped rolling to speak up? That silence often puzzles anyone following cases like this. Logically, if boundaries were crossed, the alarm would be raised the moment it happened. Yet in this situation, filming wrapped, the project was completed, and only afterward did a formal complaint emerge. That timing doesn't just seem unusual, it reshapes how the entire story is perceived. The official timeline shows production moving smoothly, scene after scene completed, without any public or internal reports of distress. Then, once the set was dismantled and the crew dispersed, allegations surfaced describing discomfort and violations of trust. The contradiction is hard to ignore. If harm was ongoing, one would expect immediate action, halting the shoot, notifying union representatives, or requesting mediation on the spot. In most productions, such reactions are not only common but encouraged. Silence, in contrast, raises questions about motive and strategy. Perhaps fear of career consequences kept her quiet. Or maybe completing the film first offered leverage, ensuring creative control while still leaving space for a later legal or public statement. Some observers see that as a tactical decision: finish the project, then reshape the narrative. Others view it as a calculated effort to command attention at the moment of release. What complicates the story further are internal accounts that describe consistent participation during filming, with notes, suggestions, and feedback attributed directly to the performer herself. When no contemporaneous objections appear in documentation, the absence feels intentional rather than incidental. If a performer holds the authority to halt a scene yet chooses not to, it inevitably colors how later allegations are received. To outside audiences, delayed accusations, especially when paired with evidence of creative involvement, often seem less spontaneous and more strategic. Every day of silence becomes part of a narrative, shifting perceptions from vulnerability to orchestration. Ultimately, the question extends beyond one production. It highlights a broader tension within the film industry. Where does collaboration end and responsibility begin? And when control is shared, can the line between participant and director ever be cleanly drawn?
Against somebody's will. We're going to discuss this. Dear Judge, on behalf of the Wayfair Party Studios, and by the way, if you're like you have no idea what this is all about, this is Blake Lively versus Baldoni. She's accusing him of smearing her. She's accusing him of harassment and a bunch of things. And the trial starts in March of 2026, unless it settles, which it looks like that will not be happening. But either way, this is what is being alleged by Baldoni's side. The materials concern an alleged recording made by the witness of a conversation with defendant Steve Sarowitz without his consent. Steve Sarowitz, the billionaire from Paylocity, who has been funding Wayfair parties in this movie. Plaintiff seeks to seal the audio recording in its entirety, although she purported to selectively quote from it in a portion of her brief in the public unsealed version she filed with the court. So Blake Lively doesn't want the audio to come out of which she has quoted from. She made some pretty big claims about how they're coming after her with these threats, and now she doesn't want people to actually hear what was actually said. She's very limber as she contorts her body to fit into whatever victimhood she...
Behind every lawsuit, the truth often hides in the receipts, the emails, texts, and quiet recollections of those who were there when the cameras rolled. In this case, those receipts tell a story very different from the one being publicly told. While the actress's legal team portrays her as a performer caught in uncomfortable situations, the emerging communications suggest another narrative entirely. The messages exchanged during filming don't read like cries for help. They read like directives, precise, confident, and intentional. According to multiple insiders, she contacted crew members with detailed notes about how key scenes should unfold, pushing for adjustments before production days even began. That portrayal stands in sharp contrast to her current claims of feeling powerless. If she truly felt uncomfortable, why do her communications reflect command rather than retreat? One example drawing attention is a thread concerning a romantic sequence. Rather than setting boundaries, she reportedly proposed ways to heighten the emotion, asking for longer takes and closer angles to intensify the on-screen connection. Such details matter in courtrooms. Written exchanges are often treated as unfiltered records of intent, more concrete than memory or performance. That's why the defense in this case is focusing heavily on these documents. Every text, note, and email functions as a strategic piece of evidence, used to argue who held creative control and who followed direction. Crew members' accounts reinforce this perspective, describing an actor deeply involved in shaping scenes, consulting with technicians, adjusting camera setups, even offering physical cues to co-stars mid-shot. Together, these testimonies and written exchanges paint a consistent picture, not of endurance, but orchestration. For the defense, that alignment is crucial. If the performer was managing rather than merely participating, it changes the entire framework of the dispute, from a case about pressure to one about power. And in a courtroom where perception defines everything, the question becomes not just what happened on set, but who was truly in charge when the camera stopped rolling.
By this court, the Supreme Court, so then they go into the case law of why they think it should be revealed. So yeah, this is a big, we're going to need to hear, what was actually said. With respect to the brief, plaintiff seeks to seal two portions, and that's Blake Lively. The name of the declarant on the top of the page, because they want to keep that person anonymous, a description of how Exhibit 1 was produced, and footnote. I think that's the privately taping of the conversation. The Wayfair parties have no objection to the first requested redaction, but as no explanation was provided for sealing the last sentence in footnote 9, that sentence must be unsealed. Regarding the declaration, plaintiff seeks to seal information regarding the timing of the meeting and the context of the conversation recorded without his consent. Other than the witness's name and the name of project the declarant worked on, none of the information reveals identity. Plaintiff improperly seeks to hide any context for the alleged verbal abuse, why the meeting with Mr. Sarowitz took place, when it took place, and what allegedly happened after the conversation. Plaintiff does not provide any explanation why the Exhibit 1 to the declaration must be sealed, other than it would invite additional media coverage, which she is concerned will be adverse to her. However, it is well settled that generalized concerns of adverse publicity and reputational injury are insufficient to justify sealing records. All right. With that said, if it's up to me, I say air the footage. Let us hear it. And let me tell you something. If what Blake alleged is not what we listen to, she has lost all.
The real showdown in this drama isn't taking place on sound stages filled with bright lights and polished costumes. It's unfolding inside courtrooms, where reputations hang by a thread and every word becomes ammunition. On one side stands Julian Hale, backed by attorney Brent Faulkner, a litigator famous for dismantling shaky testimony. On the other, Clara Voss and her legal team fight to preserve her version of events. Both camps know this battle isn't just about legal victory, it's about who leaves the courtroom untarnished in the public eye. Faulkner's strategy is becoming clear. Rather than keeping Julian on the defensive, he's flipped the narrative, using Clara's own messages and on-set communications to argue that she wasn't powerless, but directing the action. With each contradiction revealed, the burden of proof shifts. If she helped design the moments now under scrutiny, can she truly claim to have been subjected to them? Each document gives Julian's team an opening to portray Clara as the architect of her own narrative. It's a classic move, turning defense into offense, and one that could decide the case. Meanwhile, Clara's lawyers face a delicate balancing act. They may argue that her assertiveness came from fear, that her direction on set was a form of self-protection rather than control. But that line can blur easily under cross-examination. If jurors sense inconsistency, the emotional foundation of her case could fracture. Observers speculate that her attorneys might pivot toward emphasizing psychological harm, shifting the spotlight from choreography disputes to emotional impact. Yet Julian's side still sees openings. With evidence suggesting calculated behavior, Faulkner could claim that the lawsuit itself is a strategic move, an attempt to shape the story before it shapes her. If that framing sticks, the stakes rise dramatically. A misstep could tarnish Clara's career, while Julian risks carrying the weight of accusation even if he wins. Ultimately, the real contest may not be legal but reputational, fought not in a court of law, but in the court of public opinion. This scandal speaks to something larger, how power, narrative, and image intertwine in Hollywood. It isn't just Clara versus Julian, it's a fight over who controls the story, who shapes perception, and who walks away as a credible voice in an industry built on illusion. Every leaked email, every insider account, every twist underscores just how much image crafting happens behind closed doors. And one question lingers: is Clara the victim she claims to be, or the orchestrator the evidence suggests? For now, the public waits, and the verdict, in every sense, remains unwritten.